I want to share something before we start. Uh, we had an interesting conversation, me and Amir. It's about the topics we want to discuss, and I think what we noticed, there is a lot of BS right now, and everything seems like a fraud. If you start breaking down blockchain, it doesn't make any sense. Really, why the technology exists? What is the promise? Is it really working? And the decentralization doesn't exist, basically. A lot of things that is not really fulfilling. So, and if we take this whole promise and start to break it down in our conversation, we realize, okay, we are the Web3 busters, basically. And that's what makes us also unique, because we want to integrate, but we also want to bust myths. So I changed the name of the show. It's going to be Web Busters, and the web is like 3.
I saw that now on Discord. It looks good. I think it made sense, and I think it's a good role to take.
Yeah, because it's unique. I think it's also who we are, at least 3 of us. That's how I feel. And Amir also said it's part of Jupiter Con.
Yeah.
Maybe you can share.
Yeah, I was at Jupiter Con a few years ago in New York, and one of the talks there was about, I think the title was, "Why do I hate Jupyter Notebooks? I don't want to use that." That was one of the talks there. And that specific talk was very interesting because you're in the first Jupiter Con. Obviously, everything should be on Jupyter, and one of the most attractive lectures there was about why I don't use that. What are the bad sides of Jupyter? And I also remember that after JupyterCon, it had a big effect on the community, because that was kind of a mirror to us. I was kind of part of the community in a way, a bit on the sidelines, and it really shaped how things evolved later on. And I told Sharon, it makes a lot of sense to be that voice in any kind of conversation, to kind of be the devil's advocate.
Yes.
What's bad, what's wrong, what is noise, and things like that. It makes a lot of sense. It's nice.
As long as you do it in a constructive way. I think there's a lot of people that are doing it in a, it's not going to work, and that's not, we want to understand it so we can say why it won't work, and maybe we all come to the same conclusion, but it's, as you say, it's busting, it's saying, okay, this doesn't work, this does work, this has potential, but we haven't seen. I think it's a nice standpoint. And yeah, it's a good from an advisory point of view that you can say to people, but like, this is actually the reality. They're selling you this, they're saying this, but for half the price you can build it using SQL and actually understand it.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting take for us, to be respectful, but also to challenge the basic assumptions.
Yeah.
And I think what we realize is the Web3 is more social, economic change than anything else, because the technology existed before, and it's not about the blockchain itself. It's about, I think, how do you change the relationship between creators and consumers. And suddenly, we can become part of a group that creates something and can monetize it, which before that, I'm not sure it's really easy. Like, not before. It's not easy right now. Maybe in 5 years or 3 years or 2 years from now, it will be easier. And I think the only thing that I can see similar is open source, like group of people collaborating together, building something, and then somebody decided to monetize it and to create a product out of it. So it diverts. It's like a new path of looking at Web3 from more human lenses and not like the technology. Because right now, if you look at the energy consumption, the applications, there is a lot of centralization, fraud, money is being stalled, and it's a huge market. But what's the real value? I think those questions are super relevant, and I think that's what this is why we create Web Lab, to understand what is there, what does it mean, what can we do with this, how it's relevant to our lives.
Yeah, and make it more meaningful to people, as you say, the socioeconomic settings. It makes sense to me. I like it.
And I really recommend, I don't know if you read it, Martin, the last, Amir shared in the Discord, organized it a bit. What was it? This guy, Eugene Wee, right, Amir?
Yeah.
Did you read it, Martin?
I looked at some of his Twitter things, also looked at his website, but I didn't have time to actually go through all of this.
Yeah, I think, so what I did, by the way, I created a reading list in our Notion, and what's going to be the best content that we must read, not nice to have. And over time we will prune it or whatever. And this is one of them. And I think it's, maybe Amir can explain, because I think he has an interesting take of it, but he broke down this whole NFT, Web3 in a different lenses, and it was super, super interesting. I think important read that really takes where we're coming from, basically, which is more economical, social integration than just creating another fade. So it's highly recommended.
Yeah, so I think that thread started actually when you posted an article. I'm trying to figure out who wrote that article. Packy? That's his name?
Yeah.
Like the status monkeys?
The status monkeys.
Let me share that in the channel now. And as you said, we will also have that in our reading list. Where is the channel? Here. But yeah, this guy that wrote the status monkeys, he basically based his idea, his observations on this Eugene Wei. And that Eugene Wei, and I'm probably not pronouncing his name correctly, but this guy apparently created a very elaborated post, 20,000 words, that explains how can you take a company or a product and analyze if it's a social network or not. It's kind of a framework to do that. And within that framework, you have all kind of measurements and things that you need to look at. And then what he did, it kind of took NFT and did the analysis on top of that, and tried to ask the question, is NFT actually a social network and not an art technology or something like that? And his conclusion was that yes, this is kind of the future of social networks. It's a very interesting reading. I was quite overwhelmed by the depth of his understanding of the situation. I think that I don't understand most of what he's talking there, but it's quite interesting, and really recommend to go over that. And to be honest, I'm currently in a position where I don't understand NFT. Like, I understand what it does. I understand this story that everybody tells, that it's kind of like the baseball cards that everybody had in the 80s, 70s, whatever. And this is kind of your token in the digitalized world. But I do not understand, why do we need to use blockchain for that? Why do we need to use all those unique technologies, and why people think it has something to do with decentralization when actually in the reality it's not. So I have a lot of gaps in my mind. I don't think I have answers, but I don't know. What's your take on NFT up until now?
For me, I agree with you that it's a very it's a leading edge of markets. If you look at normal stock markets and that, there's market sentiment. I remember that, like the penny stocks, and that somebody would say hype it, and then everybody would get into it. It would go up and then collapse, and you'd have these waves. So a lot of trading is market sentiment, and that's basically what NFT is. As you say, the technology it's not that difficult to understand, but why? And I think that's maybe where we're too old. I don't know, maybe a Snapchat generation, the younger guys, and uh, they understand a little bit more that they don't need to have a physical thing. That's why we have Uber and all of these kind of companies that don't own anything. I think it's a novelty of it is what people are buying into. And it's also the hope of the get rich thing. I saw there was a meme where, the one guy said, you invest in this, and it was like, oh, you buy a picture of somebody and you sell it a week later for double the price, and that's how you make your money. I think socially people, especially in America, are very much on edge, and I think this is a distraction. It gives you a sense of community and that, but it's also very divisive in terms of socioeconomic kind of things, because you can see people discussing. I think it's a gimmick. I don't know. I mean, if I could find one to invest in and I could make money out of it, I mean, that's how I feel about the crypto market. Is I don't trust the cryptos, but I look to see how I can make money out of it. Yeah, that's my. I know I said a lot, but that's kind of my understanding. I'm a kid who grew up without a phone, without a computer, who had toys, and I like the physical touch. I like tangible things, tactile. I'm a tactile person. I like the touching things. It took me a long time to get used to the Kindle, even. I like the touch of the books. I like the feel. Now I use a Kindle, and I love reading. I love the fact that I can have 1,000 books, but to own a crypto monkey or the kittens and that there's nothing I can do with it. I can't put. But I think modern day kids and the kids that are coming out of COVID are probably living on their phones more. So whatever happens within a social scene of the phone is much more important. So if you have something that you can say is out there, I don't know, is it the same? And I know I'm going slightly off track, but in 100 years ago, 200 years ago, there was always place for adventurers to go. So whether it was the Wild West, Alaska, and a few other countries are the only places kind of left that you can escape. Is this the digital landscape where people can escape, where they can go, where they can experiment and do stuff? I don't know. I mean, it's also a different kind of person. It's usually the person who killed somebody and had to run halfway across the country to get away from his problems. And is this how people are getting away from problems? I don't know. I haven't studied that side of things enough.
Well, it's definitely an exploration phase for us.
Yeah. I mean, I sent you that $1 million homepage, which came around at the first HTML kind of thing. So he sold every pixel. There were 1 million pixels. He sold it for $1 each, and he made money off that. It's gimmicky, so you don't know whether the technology can be vital.
I really find it difficult to understand what is the innovation here, what is new here. Because again, if I try to break it into like a simple words, at least from my understanding, and there is a big chance it's a wrong understanding of the situation, but NFT in the real world, in the physical world, it's like, imagine shoes of Nike, right? It's like you have shoes from Nike, they have like this symbol, and this pair of shoes, if you have them, first of all, it's like a status symbol for you. So if you walk the street, people look at you, they say, all right, you're like cool, I know you're like a sport type of person, whatever. It tells something on the personality. And it also gives you access for parties, let's say. So this is NFT in the real world. It's kind of the same, but the problem with that shoes, there are all kind of problems. One of them is the fact that people can kind of make a fake shoes very quickly, very easily. And you almost have no way to distinguish between a real Nike shoes and a fake one. There is almost no way in the physical world, there is almost no way of doing that. But when you go to the digital world, actually there are ways of doing that. You can kind of have a token like the NFT basically created. And that token uniquely identified a specific piece of information. And in the digital world, that shoes is the digital information that you want to identify. And by doing that, you kind of say, right, people cannot fake that symbol. We effect of that because people can, I don't know, put that in their profile picture or what have you. And we can also authenticate based on that, meaning they can get access to parties and all kind of things or merchandise or, I don't know, content or whatever because they have that type of access. So this is basically NFT simply explained. I hope it was simple. So I'm asking again, and I'm not like asking you guys, but as an open question, this type of requirement already existed before 2021, where the NFT blew up. What was missing? Like, did any, like, and I don't know, someone in Nike needed to do that and they couldn't? I mean, the technology is there. You can just have a database with unique IDs and people get a password and that's it. So it's like a new marketing term to the same thing. Maybe this is what it is. That's like the baseball cards. Instead of saying baseball card, you just say NFT.
But I mean, the way you talk about a token, like an identifier for your shoe, I think that works quite well. That's an interesting thing. I mean, I think that's an interesting space. But when you have a token for an image that doesn't allow you to do anything, doesn't give you any value.
Yeah, this is like crazy. It's like, why?
Yeah, I mean, you using the way you described, like Nike, makes sense because then it's like a password to get you into certain places that only you have access, or key is actually the best way. Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, if you look at the crypto monkeys or whatever they are called, part of the benefits of having that image is that you get access to DAO type of parties. Currently, it's a thing. You have like online parties and gathering and all kind of things like that. And if you have that token, that is basically authenticates you to enter that virtual place, and you get all kind of other benefits as part of that.
Yeah. And maybe they're not pushing that enough. I mean, a lot of what you see about NFTs are like, you think you're owning just the image, and I think for a lot of it you are. It's some artist is putting stuff. It's.
And if we take another example, something that Sharon and I talked about was the Constitution group. You remember, Sharon? So, do you remember the story there?
Yeah, so basically they created DAO. You can put money in the DAO. The people send, I think they're like a couple of millions. And then they realize they cannot really buy it because you need to be in a company. Because it's like there is laws. So they created a company, which basically means the DAO doesn't have any real ownership on this. It's just, I don't know, it's a kind of weird donation, and then they couldn't buy it, so they need to return the money. But in order to return the money, you need to pay a lot of gas. So, and the average donation, let's call it donation, was $270, something like that, US dollars. So if you pay the tax, the gas, basically people gonna lose more than half of their money. Sometimes even 70%.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because if you really want to buy the Constitution, it's part of it. Why don't you create a real organization based on charity, and you put the money, and there is lawyers, and you know it's safe, there is regulation, because it's a lot of money. It's not like $2. And then you're doing like, why trying to use token? Like, and in the end, they didn't have any ownership. So I don't understand what happened there. It's again, it looks like a gimmick than a real attempt to give the Constitution to the public.
So, I mean, it reminds me of the story about Edison. I mean, Edison owned the electrical companies and that. And Edison, he thought people needed electrical appliances. He able to consume his electricity. So are we doing that now? We're inventing things so people use blockchain. I mean, that's where history is very interesting. It shows a lot of these kind of examples where people do things and then they encourage you to use it in certain ways because it helps them, it benefits them.
Yeah, it's like Gorilla, right? Who really needs your grocery in 10 minutes? So they're trying to change your habits. It's not really needed. Nobody's like woke up in the morning, I need my thing in 10 minutes. This is really, it's not very frequent problem. Shira?
Yeah. I mean, especially in Amsterdam, when there's always an Albert Heijn around, like some corner, 10 minutes or something.
So this is like you create, and also part of the post that I share with you about innovation. What he realized, a lot of the innovations is really people creating something and then they trying to find the need, and they're creating new needs that didn't exist before. And I think basically NFT and Web3, what we see right now is a new category for the same problem and same solution, and it's a marketing stunt. But behind the scenes, the mechanism is really interesting. And I think if you put aside everything that we see right now and you're trying to understand NFT basically does something very simple. We are a creature that motivated by our social status, where I am in the tribe, and I need to trust you, so I need to recognize you. So that's why we use symbols and art and music. And NFT is basically the same thing for the digital world. So this is how I can recognize you. You know, it's like LinkedIn. How do I know I can trust you? You have 30,000 followers, and you work in Google. Okay, enough. I trust you. I don't need. So the whole thing in evolution, you're trying to minimize the effort to get some conclusion. This is like instincts. So if I see your monkey in a profile, it means a lot, not for everyone, but for some people, that you're wealthy or you're smart or I know you're into this kind of hype. And you see people with the laser eyes in Twitter. I just learned this is because they are waiting that the Bitcoin will reach $100,000. This is like their agreement. Yeah, I didn't know it also. So this is like a social game. It's a game. If you look at it as a game, and that's why some people claim the next social media are going to be a game, like Roblox, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And it totally makes sense when they see this kind of kids stay at home with their phone. Their whole world becomes, hyper reality. Nothing is real. So this is where you live. This is all your. So you just copy paste what happened at school when you have the people that the kids that are more popular. So it's a popularity contest. You just move it to the digital domain, and then you have clothes, you have badges, you have whatever, just to prove I'm really good. I'm nice. I'm better than you. So we are playing the same game. Now it's more sophisticated, and they have the tools to say, yeah, I'm a monkey. I'm a funk, whatever. I have an NFT. I bought like the Constitution. So I don't think there is real application than pure human motivation to win some kind of a popularity contest and symbolize with something and signaling to the world, I'm part of this new game, which is exciting, is going to change the world. Like, discovering America, right? There is a new world, and it's going to be totally different than this whole promise of the promised land, basically, never exists. So this is my take on NFT and what we see right now. But the real potential is going to happen because people will need to identify themselves in the metaverse, right? They will have a digital identity.
Yeah, I think that's identity and tracking. So like if you have a supply chain, the blockchain is quite good that you can, in theory, see everything. But that's boring. It's not interesting. It's not.
True.
And to be honest, you can do that through databases, but it's not as open with a blockchain. It's obviously very open. You can see in that, but it's not exciting. It's not what gets the investors going all the time. It's not this. It's harder to hype. I think I know one fruit juice company in Amsterdam that does that. You can track who the farmer was, where did it come from.
Yeah, by the way, in Italy, and it's a pity that Enrico's not here, they have a lot of fraud around food. And then I can see it totally makes sense to verify trust through the supply chain, and you can learn who did what and is it credible. But again, who is the certifier? So you realize there is no decentralization. It's decentralization lives inside of a centralized organization. So a company can issue a DAO, a government can do. It's not like, because then you don't have the trust, you don't have the identity, you don't have the context. It doesn't make any sense at all. And then you have fraud, basically. So I agree with you. A lot of application goes back to some kind of how do we trust the supply chain, the information chain. But then there is no hype here. It's not cool. And then you're trying to take the same technology and say, I cannot verify your song. Okay, there's a lot of fraud there also, but I think what it creates, it can enable. If I'm a musician, it enables me to create my own economy. I can issue tokens. You can co-create together. We can discuss. So I think this is the real application. We are changing how economical, social environment going to look like, because people can gather and do something together, incentivize themselves, make rules, whatever, and then collaborate with another, let's call it DAO, the group of people. And that's interesting. That's really interesting.
And I think it's a valid point. I mean, what's interesting with that, it comes in conflict with two groups. I mean, we've got the multinational companies, which are acting as countries on their own, and you've got the nation states. So you've got two opposing players who don't want to give up their rights, and that. And now, if you're creating these DAOs, which are almost like a natural tribe, how big they can be and all that, we'll have to see. But they're a virtual country, a virtual corporation, or something like that. Yeah, I guess people, again, as you say, it comes down to trust. Can I trust that it's not some counter agent for my country, but what's the value? I think it's an interesting point that you made. It's also why I think there's a lot of miscommunication around.
I agree.
blockchain.
It's all about trust, by the way. That's why you create like Bitcoin. If you read the manifesto, whatever it was, it's about how do you trust and lower the cost of transaction.
Yes.
And this is the promise, which, by the way, doesn't exist, but you still need an identity. If you if you join a wallet, you have a wallet, you need to have your ID card. Otherwise, you can learn. This is like a big thing. So
to trade on a legitimate exchange,
Yeah.
yes, you have to do KYC so that
Yeah.
they know your customer, so they can validate you. Yeah.
Yeah, and then okay, so if Amir gave me some stats, you realize everything is going on, I know, at least in the Bitcoin, is centralized, by the way, by big companies. Some of them are traded, like big exchanges, mining companies, the infrastructure. It's not like people like you and me gather together, peer-to-peer, let's build something cool. It's because it's too complicated, it's too complex, it's not efficient enough, and then why you need centralization? Because then we have the power to do something and to agree, and we can verify and we can identify terrorists or fraud or, I don't know, some crazy people. And then, of course, you centralize also power. So then you serve only yourself. So it's like a chicken and the egg. Well, what are we doing here? Like, we're going to centralize anyway because you need to verify. And you need the trust. You need the, if you're going to lose your money, somebody's going to give it you back because it's your pension. Right? So this has become very speculative market. It's all or nothing game.
Agree.
So I think what we see right now, NFT, whatever is hype. If you, and that's what I want to do in our show. It's like to start break the promises. If you go through history and say, okay, why they created this? What was the promise? Okay, let's start break it down. What does it mean to have a blockchain? Okay, just whatever. Okay, how does it compare to anything else? Okay, it already exists. So what happened here? And lower transaction cost. It's not true. You need to pay gas or whatever. Centralization. Okay, does it really exist or not? So if you, and that's why I think calling the show the Webbuster, and also the episode, the first episode is, the name is Can Trust It. Like, can't touch this. And it's like, it's not, you cannot touch it. It's something here is really, really weird. And I think we want to find something meaningful during this show and during Web Lab. Like, can we make something interesting, meaningful, not just for fun, like monkeys? Something that people can solve a real problem, can integrate to their life, to their work, to their problems, opportunities, and maybe it will take years. I don't know, but I think this is our direction, which is kind of, if I look everywhere is like, this is amazing, this is cool, it's gonna change the world, or either this is a fraud, don't look at it, it's bullshit. It's like. And also the education part is only about the good stuff. It's not about, okay,
Yes.
if you look at the first principle of what we are trying to do here, does it really work? I don't think so. I just realized that one transaction in the Ethereum is worth energy consumption, which I don't understand how they compare it, but this is another discussion. 10,000, 100,000 transaction in your credit card. Like, what? It's like somebody needs to fix it. It's not really sustainable. So I think that's why we're here, like, to make sense.
I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate in terms of that. I mean, the argument is always that Ethereum is moving from proof of work to proof of stake. I mean, they keep saying it, and it never quite happens. I mean, again, it should happen next year, but whether it actually happens or not. But yeah, I think it's the understanding of what underlying, as you say, the costs and that. I don't always think that you see, you look at like one Visa transaction, but and compared to one Ethereum transaction, but are you comparing apples and oranges?
Yeah,
because
that's what I'm saying. You're not, because there is an organization and infrastructure which is bigger than the whole Ethereum that consume energy and whatever.
Yeah, and it's also, is it one Ethereum transaction, or is it actually a block of transactions that's going into one node? There's actually a couple of transactions. I still think Ethereum does consume a lot of money. But for, like, in terms of money transfers and that, which is, if you're an expat, you have that kind of problem, it works really great, except then you get the central bank stepping in and saying, okay, we need to check because of money laundering. And I mean, that's also the biggest fear. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. I think it has good basis, is that it's going to be misused for drugs, dark net kind of stuff. Where does it end? Who can control it? Who needs to? I mean, if you're an anarchist kind of, you don't need control. People should control themselves or destroy themselves. But
so this is a social questions. And how do you use technology first? It's not like, okay, we have a technology, what will we do with this? This is like too simple. So this is another thing that will disappear in 5 years, like, like every technology, it's progressing. And I think the real question is, like, how does it connect to our lives? What does it mean? How does it help us to connect better or to achieve something that we couldn't achieve before? And this is the real questions. And what you see out there is just speculation. And I agree with you, you cannot compare like the energy consumptions. Of course, it's costing a lot and we can make it better, which then raise the question, what's going to happen to all those miners in the world? They're making tons of money and infrastructure are going to disappear. And probably they have some kind of a political power because it's connected to big VCs, which is LP, and it's the same chain in the end. And I think that's what maybe a Twitter founder, Jack Dorsey, is saying, like, they are trying to control it. Maybe, it's like, but not intentionally, because they have the money. In order to build it, you need a lot of money and resources. So you take the money from the same people who create decentralization, so which is the pension companies and banks. So what are we doing here? And that's, I think, this is the marketing. It's a story.
It's the tech is decentralized. The management of it and the actual value, even Bitcoin itself, although it's decentralized, you can go and look, and as soon as there's a downturn, the bigger whales, they call them, they increase their account. They go and buy more because so they sell maybe at the top and then they buy some more when it's down. So they get bigger and bigger. And eventually they can control enough of it.
Yeah, but because I think the basic principle that we are missing, humans are still humans, and we are dependent on existing social networks, existing cultural history. You don't invent something from nothing and you ignore everything. This is wrong. So if you understand a little bit history, which is good in this, like what Amir told me about loans, how loans started this whole market, or futures, which is the foundation of stock exchange, you realize the real, like they're trying to minimize risk. That's all, to explore new stuff or to sell food. You need to learn this in order to understand where we are, because then you say, this is amazing, it's going to change the world. But yeah, but you are dependent on this old world still. It's not going to disappear tomorrow. This is what gives you your food, electricity, education.
In fintech finance, well, I wouldn't call it fintech because I'm going way back. A lot of the innovations were because people were trying to steal your money. So you have the Knights Templar starting checks, basically a piece of the paper that had value, because you used to carry your gold around, but when you went on the Crusades or when you were going on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, you could get robbed in between. So they had a bank kind of system that took your money, and then obviously that progresses that people make copies of it, make fraud. So it kind of, the innovation leapfrogs itself, the innovation, the frauds guys. It's an interesting space in general. How, as you say, the history of things.
Yeah, the storytelling, I think. And I just realized in the last conversation we talked about Henry Ford. He said, if I ask my customer what they want, they said faster horses, not cars. And then I realized, because I was searching for the quote, he didn't say it.
It's often with these things, it's slightly different. Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of myth, how things happened, or who said what and what did, and history, or an urban legend, who said what, and then you realize it's not him. So what does it mean? So I think it's the same here. That's my feeling. Like, we need to break it down and understand the real potential, and what does it mean, and can it make our life work better, create value, a better society, and not just another stock exchange that sells something, doesn't mean anything, like, I don't know, dogs on a coin, like, I don't know. This is like any bubble.
And I agree with the sentiment. The problem, it becomes definition of what is a better society. Is it a nanny state, or is it a anarchical state, or I don't know. I don't have, smarter guys than me have been debating that for 3,000 years.
Yeah, I agree. So you start with what you see and understand, I guess. And that's part of our principles. They can make it applicable. Like, what do we see? Where is our coherence? How do we make sense of what we? And I think that's part of any problem right now in the world. By the way, I'm a little bit deviating. Everything becomes global. And I think, I don't know if Stalin said it, but he said something like, one person is killed is a tragedy, 100 million is statistics. And I think it's because it's hard for us to see something big that it's not connected to our life. If it's a single story, you can connect, you can see, you can feel. If it's 100 people, it's become hard to really grasp this kind of enormous energy. And the real problems and solutions are local. Something that you can really influence, you can really understand, you have empathy, and not trying to solve whatever it is, like this super big. This is this is not for everyone. The real problems we need to take care of is like, okay, I'm not really enjoying my work. I think this whole hierarchy doesn't work at all, and we need to work in a very creative way. How can we use this kind of thing to have more direct connections to our customers? And I don't need all the middlemen, for example. And this is the right economics to say, as a customer, you become co-creator if you want to. By the way, this is open source, what I just described. People with passion trying to solve a local problem, right? Local, they have the problem, and collaborate with people around the globe, and suddenly something becomes relevant to a lot of other people, and somebody said, okay, let's make money out of it.
That jump from open source to making money is actually a treacherous one. Like the identity server, they've tried to do that. It's a piece of software that they had open source, and now and I don't blame them. I think the quality of the software that they deliver is used to, but then people start complaining and they like go run around and try to find alternative. People want to avoid that paying money. So it's the same, yeah. You have to watch how things work, but also like when we talk about a man in the street, like, well, how would the man in the street feel? I mean, the man in the street in Amsterdam and the man in the street here in Africa are two different people. One is probably more digitally connected than the other. There are a lot of smartphones here, but they have different requirements, different needs. I mean, we have people that are pulling trolleys and they're going through bins for recycling thing. I mean, they work really hard trying to get that, and you see them like early mornings and kind of pulling these things. They're empty in the mornings usually, but it's a different kind of survival need in some ways.
Yeah.
So if you can help them on a certain level, yeah, it would be really great. I mean, in terms of payments and all that, if it's easier. But I don't think blockchain is geared for that. It's very much the first world kind of thing.
Yeah.
Although they're putting Bitcoin in El Salvador, so who knows?
Um,
I mean, that's sorry, I'm interrupting myself and you. But Zimbabwe, now, it's an interesting case that they have a cryptocurrency, digital currency, wallet-based thing, but they also have very little electricity at times. But because their currency collapsed, and it wasn't really official, but my sister who went there, you could do everything with it. You had this kind of thing, you paid for stuff and that, and they found a way. So maybe from a payment point of view, not having to carry notes, that inflation is kind of making invalid after a month and that, because you have to stamp 3 extra zeros on it. Maybe that makes sense. But yeah, I don't know enough. So it's almost a third world country sometimes do, out of necessity, do more innovation with these kind of electronic things.
Yeah, I just realized something. The more is out of context in my life, it's hard for me to understand because I don't have the experience. Even judging, I don't know, Jack Dorsey or I don't know AZ16. I don't know. I'm just reading stuff. You're not there. You don't know what is real. And I guess that what we're trying to do here is not to judge people or decisions. You know, if you want to buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. I don't know. Maybe for you it's right. I think it's what can we take out of it in our lives and make something out of it, and not trying to say, you know, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. It's more like we are creating, and I think this is the future. We are creating our own signal, our own coherence based on trust. And this is against human history, because human history is about we have one religion, and we talked about last time. It's either we are with us or against us, and suddenly reality became more fragmented. You can become a woman, a man, in between. You know, you have different identities, different kind of religion, different kind of people. It's like a dream. You can join dream worlds and say, I'm part of it. It's like different kind of belonging. And I think what we're trying to do here is saying who we are. What can we do with this for our lives? And it doesn't mean that somebody else is wrong. Maybe he's wrong. I don't know. But I don't really care because I don't understand his world and his context. Right? So I think our attempt is not to judge the Web3 economy and where it's going or whatever, just because maybe we are wrong. We could be wrong what we are saying because we really don't know. And a half year from now, say, Sharon, it was bullshit. So what do I see and understand right now? And Leo, Rega, what do I see right now that makes sense to my problem, my domain, my solutions, my economy, people around me, and not trying to solve somebody else's problem that I don't understand or judge somebody else's decisions that I don't understand. Because the world becomes very complex. I don't know. I'm not there. It's not like, it's not a person that I know. Everything is global, but in the same way, it's meaningless.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a reminder for us why we are here. What is our intention? It's not for saying, this is bullshit. It's too much energy consumption. Okay, you can judge any technology when it starts. It's bullshit, right?
And I think one of the principles that you put there is like how it integrates with people, and I think that's it. It must make people's life. I mean, we've taken technology, and yes, we've made people's lives a little bit better. Except now, we don't work just when the sun's up. We work like 16 hours a day, and people can contact you on weekends and that. So we don't always have a balance. Yeah, it's finding. Yes, if the technology helps, it's great. But does it help everything? Does it help achieve balance?
I agree.
Or just does it create more information that we're getting left behind with?
And I think this is a great point that what is the total sum of what we are doing right now as a humanity, it doesn't look good. And the problem for not only technology, is how do we organize ourselves? How do we trust each other? Are we connected with nature? How do we understand what's going on, making sense? And I think this is the real problem, like consciousness. We are not connected. We don't understand our impact. We just scaled our factory to the size that it's just destroying everything. It was true like 50, 60 years ago. Now it doesn't make sense anymore when you have, I don't know, how many, like 6 billion, 8 billion people?
7.
7. So 7 billion people.
Somewhere.
And everybody wants to become an American and buy things on Christmas. It doesn't make sense anymore. We need to find new ways to define life. And consumption is dead or gonna kill us.
It's because Hollywood has sold a myth that is turning out to be not true. There's the propaganda machine about capitalism, democracy, and all of that. America has it all, but now they have a two-party state which is fighting itself.
Yeah.
And when you see the homeless and all of that, they have big problems in certain places.
Yeah. So again, it's not the technology, it's where you're coming from and what you're trying to achieve. I think that's our role. Like, where are we coming from? Where are we going? And what is important for us? And selling an art, it's not my game. Maybe there was an artist here and we can help him because it makes sense. He's creating something that, whatever, I don't know, like a game that's gonna help, I don't know, make sense. But I want to see something that has not an impact, but a sensible story that connects to my values. I don't know what is a good society, but I don't know what is a good friendship. Maybe your definition is different, which is fine. So we are not in the same tribe, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting, the stuff that Amir posted about the cost of creating an NFT being like $100, which seems like crazy. I mean, when we were talking earlier about the copyright for artists, I understood that. It's like a really good way to copyright an image. You can get some kind of credit for it. So you can see where it comes from. But if it's going to cost you $100, artists can't afford that. It doesn't become practical. And it's looking at I think it's like part of the myth busting is looking at the hype. People are saying X, Y, Z, but currently the cost of using the technology means this is not practical unless you're in the right space. And you're lucky and you sell lots of NFTs, but...
Yeah. Which is fine because now it's niche. It's not for everyone. Okay, maybe 2 years from now or I don't know, whatever, it will be very cheap.
And if you look at the Ethereum promises versus the reality, it's like everything is opposite. The amount of transaction, the cost, anonymity, things like decentralization, everything they tried to achieve, they didn't. Maybe they're trying to reach that point. I understand that, but it's definitely not there. And the gas prices is just one example. But the fact that one of the numbers they've seen is that 0.1% of the network is in charge of most of the calculations and the verifications and so on, which means in reality that it is a centralized game. Because if it was not a centralized game, you had 50% of the people or 60 or 40, whatever of the network are part of the game, but the reality is different. Now, more astonishing fact is that there is no real peer-to-peer in Ethereum. It doesn't really exist. The initial thought was that you want to enable people to interact between each other and to do transactions. And then the network has the role of verifying those transactions. But the reality, this peer-to-peer network almost doesn't exist. You can try to do that. It's somewhere out there, but there are almost no players in that network, which means that if you try to do a transaction, it takes a lot of time. And the networks that
Lost you. Yeah.
It was just getting interesting.
I don't know if you can still hear me. Yeah,
He's
somebody
about to
blocked
reveal. He's about to
Yeah,
reveal
yes.
everything, and then the Ethereum masters.
No, but it's interesting to know that the networks that we're using are actually centralized networks that are being owned by few people. And this is exactly what you guys mentioned a few minutes ago. This is what Jack is talking about. We're trying to do something, but we're doing it wrongly. And we're trying to do the right thing. But I think that this topic deserves at least like its own episode or its own session that we need to drill in and to talk about those things. It's super interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do next, is really choose something and exhaust it and then move to another thing and not just talk about different stuff. This is like more the beginning, so we're trying to figure out what we are doing here. But I think it's more efficient to focus and say, okay, let's like how do we progress in a way that it's consumable also for us, and not talk about everything. Which is right now it's fun because we are like 3 weeks ago I didn't know anything about this, or 4 weeks. Now we can have a meaningful conversation. So in the beginning it's like any innovation, you're like, and then you have like a signal. So we are there, and I agree. We need to choose to focus on something and then exhaust it, or at least have some kind of conclusion, move on. This is really, really important.
Yeah, have one question to answer, whether it's our question or an external from somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, one question at a time.
It's just like funny that I think last week I asked Martin, or 2 weeks ago, what is a wallet?
Yes.
This is like where I was a few weeks ago and where I am now. I don't think I understand it all, but I understand like 5%, which is enough to have a conversation.
Yeah, and that's only in 2 weeks, I think, which is amazing. I think that's the promise of being here. We will go deep and understand things that nobody understands right now, or only few people, you know.
As we said before, blockchain is a combination of technologies that existed. I mean, encryption, RSA keys, public-private, that has existed for a long time. I mean, 20 years ago I was working with this stuff, and it hasn't really changed much. It's just, yeah, how it gets applied is changed.
And the packaging.
Yeah.
It's more the packaging than the. But by the way, this is the rule of, if you wanna. That's why some companies control the market. I know, like you always have a leader in any market. Their distribution is better, which means marketing and sales. Depends where you are. It could be a combination and only one of them. It's like you control the people's perception What is a running shoe for 20 years old lady? Nike. Even if you're not going to buy it, this is your perception. You know, what is a great soda drink? Coca-Cola. That's it. They control your perception. What is reality? The conversation. And this is how we work. It's not just because they tried. We have like association. We have an object and we need to associate with some kind of another object. So if you control these objects in your perception, it's controlling. But you are the first, or you are the biggest, or you are doing it the best, or you are the most notorious. This has become like what is for. It's like it's an equation. Again, from efficiency point of view of human mind, I guess, to make faster decisions.
Yeah, the brain doesn't actually like thinking. It uses heuristics to short circuit it, and as long as you can get those heuristics kind of right.
Yeah.
There's an interesting book if you ever want to read. If you're talking about real, what's real? The Case Against Reality by Donald Hoffman. He goes a little bit out there. I mean, he even says maybe his theory is invalid, but he wants to ask the questions to there. It's like, how much do we see is actually real? Because a lot of it is about evolution and attraction and like survival, and that it goes into more depth, obviously. But it's a very interesting space.
Yeah. Okay. I found a YouTube video. I'm gonna watch it later. So I think we can finalize. It's also a little bit late. I think what's next. So I start organize better the Notion, if you notice, and Twitter, and so we can have announcement because I cannot tag you in Notion, so you know what's going on. And I'm gonna create 2 shows. One is like the raw meeting, because it's fun, I think, half a year from now to see where we were. And then this is gonna be, the name is the laboratory or something like that. And then we have the busters, the web busters, which is the like bits, and then it's like between 5 to 10 minutes. We still need to talk about the roadmap. I think this is important because I think we understand the principles, we understand like where are we going, but more the execution part of what are we going to explore is not clear yet, or it could be developed over time. And
I think I already added a few things there, but like I think first of all, I don't remember where is this document. I need to find it, but maybe
I didn't create one. I'm not sure if
there is one that we wrote down from a tech point of view what we want to explore, like all kind of angles. We want to create an NFT. We want to create this, that. Like there are more. Like I want to use that bucket to list questions that I want to ask and explore. Things like, if DAO is so great, why don't we have a successful DAO today? Like the Uber DAO, why it doesn't exist if it solves everything?
Maybe it exists, but you're not part of it. You're hidden.
Yeah.
I posted the link for the roadmap.
I'll use this document to add more questions that I have.
Yeah, I think maybe we should start with questions, and this is the roadmap. Yeah. And start discussing them and create documents, or if something is really, because I'm not going to explain what is Web3. People do it better than us, and it's just copy paste, so it's dumb. But really answering like basic questions, not what is blockchain, like what is the promise of blockchain, and is it really happening? And if you break it down, okay, this is an interesting conversation. Right, like go to the every time I read a lot of books about basketball coaches or even players. They're saying a lot of people don't know the fundamentals, and not about shooting. It's about how you move your legs. So you don't know the fundamentals. If you control the fundamentals, you are like an A player. So let's go to the fundamentals, the principles, the promise, the human behavior, the heuristic, how do we think, how do we collaborate? And then that's where you see creativity, because you know the basic colors, you can create a picture. It's not copy paste. And that's what a lot of people are not doing. Okay, opening a wallet, I can understand, I can read something and create it. Okay, I can create a DAO right now, but why? And I think that maybe this is going to be the roadmap.
You almost have to be like your 4-year-old kid. I don't know if he's doing it yet, but it's why? Like if somebody says something, but why? Why should I? But it's coming from an informed point of view, not a 4-year-old's point of view. They're going, why must you use that? Some of the best bosses I've ever worked for, when you propose something to them, they ask you, why do you want to do it this way? Why not this way? And if you could justify to them why you wanted to do something that way, then they backed you 100%. But you had to go through that process, which was, they knew the systems, they knew the risks and things like that a little bit better than you did. But they would ask the questions that were sensible to them, and you needed to prove yourself to them. And I think, that's kind of our thinking. We need to ask why, but say, okay, why not this? Why? What are the alternatives? Are there benefits? You had to justify what you were doing.
First principle thinking. You go to the fundamentals and try to understand. Like, this is the thought process. I think this is what missing a lot in everywhere. From people think they can build a product because they learn how to code.
With Solidity, it's very easy to build a smart contract, and there's also on GitHub, there's smart contracts to do everything, so it's easy to create a smart contract. Whether it has any value or not is irrelevant. To create a token is not that difficult. I think it's the ERC20 or something like that. It's the basic token smart contract.
So I think we need to there's a real project because somebody, I want to open a wallet. Okay, fine. I don't know if it's a community project, but it could be my project because I want to understand. And then we need to learn by doing. That's part of our principle, and that's what we are doing. But I think also answering questions, and maybe we need to open it like, what are the questions we want to follow to break down the myths that are there, that maybe they are wrong, maybe they are right.
And even opening up a wallet is like you were asking about Gemini. You can open up there, but there's different wallets, custodial and non-custodial. I know I keep going on about those.
This is an interesting conversation to have, like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. What is a wallet and how do we use it, and those differences? That's actually interesting.
Because like you were talking about the hacks that have happened. Now the hacks haven't been on blockchain. They've been on those custodial wallets that I get your keys and I get access to the stuff. So I get access to your accounts rather than getting access to the blockchain. So I'm not hacking the technology, I'm hacking the exchange, how they store stuff.
Yes. This is interesting. This is a good topic.
So this is what part of the things we need to break down, and not from knowledge, from wisdom. Like, what does it mean? What can we learn from it? Not, okay, I understand what is Web3. No, you don't understand. Like, go deep. So I think this is the roadmap. And then we have the shows. Notion, I'm keeping update with the reading list and the Twitter, and as I said. And I think it looks really great, by the way. Not maybe design-wise, because it's very simple, but it's like the way it's to create and organize. I think that's it. Just